Hey, thanks for the download for the stream. If you're just listening in your buddy's car right now, thank you for lending me your ears for a moment. But I need you to go a little bit of an extra mile. If you enjoy Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, help me make it as successful as I possibly can by, first of all, making sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it's on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Android, whatever you're doing. Hit the subscribe button to make sure that you get to download Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast each and every week. Then head on over to iTunes, hit the 5 stars, and give it a review. 5-star rating and a review. You can write a million things. Oh my God, I love your podcast. You know what? I thought I hated Sam Roberts, but the podcast isn't that bad. You know what? Sam Roberts is pretty cool, but the podcast sucks. Yay, man, I love the guests. Hey, I hate the guests. Whatever you do, put 5 stars next to the review, and it will help me out more than you can possibly imagine. Okay? Do your part, and I'll do mine. What's my part? Presenting to you this week's Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Boy, oh boy, what a week, what a week, what a week, what a week. What a time to be alive, what a time to be a fan of professional wrestling. And that's what we're here to talk about is pro wrestling. It's Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, and I appreciate all of you being here once again. It's been a really fun week to be Sam Roberts. And I hope to be people who listen to Sam Roberts, because that's who you are. And I'd love for you to have a fun week as well. You know, I don't usually check the iTunes rankings. I don't exactly know like how those rankings are made or built. It can be elating, if that's a word. To become elated, is it elating? It can be something that makes one elated, or it can be something that makes one very, very frustrated. It can be a nuisance. If you check it, oh, I was 28 before and now I'm 32. I don't understand. I have more downloads. I don't know what they're based on, but I don't check the numbers in general, or at least I try not to, because that's not what the podcast is about. That's not why we started doing the podcast. And I think that if you're doing a podcast, you should figure out why you started doing it and do it for that reason the entire time. This podcast has become pretty successful, but I can't, let the podcast dictate, the success of the podcast dictate what the podcast is, because that's not why the podcast is here. Does that make sense? So if I check the numbers too much, if one is to check the numbers too much, I feel like you end up not being even a fan of wrestling anymore. You're not a fan of pro wrestling. Instead, you're tuning in Monday night so that you can have something to talk about on the podcast this week, and you're just staring at the boob tube trying to figure out what your hot take is that's going to make all the wrestling websites be like, oh, did you hear what Sam had to say this week? As opposed to just watching the shows and going to shows because you enjoy them, and then being like, man, I want to talk to some wrestling fans about this stuff. Let me turn this mic on and talk to them. That's what the podcast is all about. So that's why I don't really look at numbers. I more think about you guys. Like I love the fact that there are some of you out there. I love the fact that there are more of you out there now than there ever have been. I love meeting people at wrestling shows or not. I love standing online in Chipotle and looking at someone who shows me their phone and they're listening to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. It happens, and I love it. That's what I love, knowing that it's that the show is resonating on that level. But my dad is a numbers guy. My dad checks all the numbers of everything that I do. I mean, it's masochistic what he does. He goes on Twitter and searches @notsam for mentions. And then, like, if I go over to my folks' house for dinner, he'll be like, oh my God, I saw this funny mention. They say they compared you to Art Garfunkel, except said you had a worse hairline. I was like, Dad, I came for the chicken. I didn't realize I was going to have to stay for the ragging on. Okay, I'm able to avoid these things, but now you internet trolls are successfully invading my space by going into my family's house because of my dad. So I thank you for that. But it does come in handy sometimes. I went over to my dad's house over the weekend, and he informed me that something must have happened because after 3 years of doing Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, we've had our moments where we've been at the top of the charts. We've had our moments where we've been, the podcast everybody's talking about, and it's awesome. But a lot of that stuff comes early or whatever. Like, after 3 years, You kind of settle into your audience, you settle into your pace, and you do what you do. My dad told me to open iTunes, and over the weekend I saw that Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, our podcast, not my podcast, our podcast, was the #1 wrestling podcast in the world. I don't know how it happened. I don't believe that you guys are still doing this. It was after last week's episode and then the State of Wrestling bonus show where we talked about Kurt Angle coming back and AJ Styles going over to Raw for the Finn Balor match. Something in there resonated to the point where it made Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast the #1 show. And I mean, I'm flabbergasted that this show is even in a conversation that anybody has amongst greats. And I'm talking about greats. I'm talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin and Chris Jericho and Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard. You know, that this little podcast, this rinky-dink operation that we're doing here out of the Not Sam Studios is ever in a conversation that anybody has with those podcasts is so unbelievably humbling to me. I have to say thank you to all you guys for making this show an amazing life experience for me, and I hope to be able to make really cool stuff for you guys, to put on awesome shows and events and give you guys looks into things that I'm able to give you looks into. I don't know. I'm very grateful for everything that you guys did to put the podcast where it was over the last weekend. So thank you so much. We got a big show this week. A lot to talk about. The Raw SmackDown rivalry that kind of, I mean, you know, the idea is that it's been going on since the brand split, but in reality, it started this week, right? Here and there. Oh, team blue, team red, a little bit, but not really, you know, in terms of actually people caring and there being a rivalry, it just kind of started this week, and that was very controversial. I heard friends of mine with differing opinions, and that's always interesting. Wade Keller, for instance, a friend of the podcast, hated, in my perspective, I was reading on his website, he seemed to have hated what happened on Raw. Dan Soder, a friend of the podcast, loved what happened on Raw. So I'm going to talk about the Raw Under Siege and what it meant for SmackDown, as well as everything that happened on Raw and SmackDown this week. Lots to talk about all over this grand world of wrestling. Of course, Jeff Jarrett officially being gone from GFW. We'll get into that and a whole lot more. But first, the interview segment this week. I don't know how many of you were following me on Twitter, but I teased that just this week, yesterday, at the time of this recording, I found an interview that I did in 2010 with Stone Cold Steve Austin. A lot of people, when I meet them, they ask about my career path, you know, because I think there are a lot of people who would love to be interviewing wrestlers. And I don't forget that, by the way, that I'm kind of pretty fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, because I think a lot of people would like to host a wrestling podcast and do a show on SiriusXM and do this stuff. So a lot of times people will say, you know, do you have any advice? How do I get to do what you did? And I talk to people about that stuff. But the thing that I think everybody needs to remember is that I've been doing this a long time. And some of you know exactly how long I've been doing it, and some of you just kind of stumbled upon me and have no clue. But, you know, we're 15 years into the Not Sam dynasty at this point. And to me, I don't think things were always as smooth. I've been working at SiriusXM for a while, and working at SiriusXM gave me opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. The opportunity to interview people that I wouldn't have gotten to interview otherwise. And that happened for me in 2010. This was 7 years ago. A little more than 7 years ago. This was March of 2010. Stone Cold Steve Austin came up to SiriusXM, and he was promoting a movie that he was in, and I had the opportunity to interview him, and we were going to run it, I don't know, somewhere on our channel at the time, I'm sure. I don't know if this ever aired. I found this. I know it's never been online or on the podcast or whatever. The video is nowhere. But this was the first time I believe that I interviewed Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, you know, I think that you see a lot of people And by the time that they're put in front of eyes, by the time that there's a big audience to look at them, they've had the opportunity to hone their skill a little bit. They're better than they were because the years, to be great at anything, you have to do it for 10,000 hours. And for most people, most of the beginning several thousand hours are done in front of no eyes. For me, because my first job in radio, one of my first jobs in radio was an internship with Opie and Anthony, which at the time was a giant show. Most of what I've done is documented. Most of my learning, as far as broadcasting goes, as far as my road to becoming the last professional broadcaster, most of that was done in front of thousands of people. And I think that that's good. There's no hiding anything with me. There's no like, I was born doing this or that or this or that. I'm not even that good now. But I was much worse, much, much worse several years ago, and that includes 7 years ago, in 2010. I was listening to this interview, and it's embarrassing. I thought I sucked. It was like, you can listen to it, and I'm talking through my nose. My voice is way more high-pitched, and it's because I'm nervous. Because I'm standing in front of this person who's like an idol of mine, and I don't know what to talk to him about, even though I know everything to talk to him about. But my voice is way up high. I'm talking through my nose. You'll hear it in the interview. I'm asking him way more questions than I have to about his movie, because in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, he's here to promote the movie, so I better make sure that I ask him about the movie. When in reality, Stone Cold Steve Austin is a cool dude. If you just kind of hang out, you talk to him a little bit about the movie, and then you just, shoot the shit a little bit, talk about wrestling, do what you do, you're cool. I'm sure 8 years from now, by the way, I'll look back at these podcasts and think, Jesus Christ, you had no idea what you were doing. But in 2010, I really had no idea what I was doing. I've made fun of a lot of people on the radio for a long time. And I think it's important at times to throw yourself under the bus, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Does that make sense? That's why I decided this week on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, this is very risky. We're going to take a walk down memory lane. I'm going to play for you an interview that I recorded with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Lost interview in 2010. This was before I met him. I know the guy now. We've communicated. When I talk to him now, we have rational conversations like two people. In 2010, was I a wreck? Was I a wreck? And please feel free to tweet me. Most of the time, when you tweet me terrible things about the interviews that I post on this podcast, I get very, very upset. This week, tweet me every terrible thing that I did. Isolate the clips if you want to. Share them with the world, because the world needs to understand. The last professional broadcaster at one point was anything but professional. I mean, this is a lousy interview. And it's this week's interview. Stone Cold Steve Austin and a mousy Sam Roberts from 2010 on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. I'm probably going to regret this, but let's go to it.
And now, the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast interview.
All right, we're here with the legend himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. How are you, Stone Cold?
Check. I'm doing good, man. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm doing good today. I'm having fun when I run around New York City and promoting the movie Damage.
So do you go by Stone Cold now that you're an actor, or is it just Steve Austin?
In Monday Night Raw, I love being Stone Cold Steve Austin, but after that show, we didn't roll credits, and it didn't say at the end of Raw, Stone Cold Steve Austin played by Steve Austin.
Right.
And still, a lot of times in doing the publicity or anything that I do, I get introduced to Stone Cold Steve Austin. But, that'd be like saying, okay, we've got Rocky Balboa in here to talk about his new movie, The Expendables, where he plays Barney Ross. So, I'm always going to be called Stone Cold. It goes with the territory. It was just a very strong character that, I had a lot of success and a lot of fun, and people live vicariously through him. So I've been called a lot worse, and I'm happy being called either Stone Cold or Steve Austin. But I always label my movies, or I'm always credited as being Steve Austin.
Now, you legally changed your name to Steve Austin, correct?
I did, and that was just to eliminate a lot of confusion. And it wasn't done because I wanted to always be Steve Austin. It was just done for some legal reasons.
Okay. So you're in Damage. It's a kind of badass fighting underground fight club type of movie. There's a lot of fighting in it, and I was kind of wondering while I was watching it, how is it adapting to movie choreography fighting as opposed to wrestling, where wrestling is just live, boom, 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 and movies is just a little more slow paced.
It's a lot different because you want to be able to you've got to set your lenses up to cover all the angles. I mean, when you're throwing punches at a guy's face. Now, I broke a guy's nose in this face. In this movie, I wasn't supposed to break his nose. It was an accident. But I should have never been close enough to break his nose. It was my fault. But, in pro wrestling, you really hit the guys. You just kind of pull back a little bit, and then in a ring you're never fighting for a camera. I'll never pick a hard camera or guys with the handhelds. I just go out there and do my job, or I did my job and let them film accordingly.
Right.
You've got to be in line, and there's so many technical things to think about when fighting for film. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, but as I keep doing these movies, and now I've done 3 or 4 back to back, starting to get a swing of things. Not only just for the acting and the dialogue, which I really love, but a sense of the best way to fight for camera, and watching especially Sly Stallone and filming The Expendables, watching how he goes about his business and filming great fight scenes, which he's known for.
So The Expendables, that's the big movie that's coming out in the end of the summer, right?
Comes out, I think, last I heard was August 13th, 2010, and the adrenaline, testosterone, bullets, bombs, explosions on the set of that movie were incredible. And that's before you even talk about the all-star action hero cast that's in it. So it's gonna be probably the coolest big budget movie of 2010. I'm not going to pick it over Damage, but I'm here to talk about Damage. But as far as a big studio movie, Expendables is the bomb.
So Damage is out on DVD now. Before Damage, you did The Condemned. Before that, you were in The Longest Yard. All 3 of these movies, your character is either in jail at some point or working in a jail. What's with the jail theme running through your movies?
I don't know. My outlaw past is catching up to me. I don't know. It's just I think it's just a coincidence, and or maybe that being said, it's a little bit of a comfort zone for me to maybe come from that world. I think I was an expert at being Stone Cold Steve Austin and very successful and on Monday Night Raw and being that guy. As I try to, delve further into the field of acting and try to hone my acting chops, I look forward to the day where I can pull off any character from any background, and with different levels of depth and a believable character with many different qualities or flaws. But I guess coming from the jailhouse background is a starting point for me and a place for me to move forward from.
That said, right now you're on the action route. Do you see yourself moving away from action and doing the Tooth Fairy type movies that The Rock has decided to do with his time, or are you sticking for action right now?
Yeah, I think the Rock makes interesting choices, and choices that he lives with, and I can respect that, and I respect him as a man. I've known him for a long time. I am comfortable doing the action movies. I want to be comfortable doing any kind of movie, but I think that being said, I need to make smart decisions as well and take care of my hardcore fan base. Quite honestly, I know that I'm not Marlon Brando. I hope to be as close to Marlon Brando as I can by the time I get through with this endeavor, but I'm in front of a movie camera because of my wrestling background, and that's my biggest catalog of work. So I think it's an area that I do want to focus on initially. And if I can make 20 or 30 more action movies, I'll consider myself a lucky guy.
Yeah.
If I get a chance to step out of the box and do something a little more humorous or comedic, then that would be a breath of fresh air and maybe endear me to a whole different level or a whole different audience. But I just want to make good movies, whether it's action, comedy, this, that, or whatever. I want to make good movies that I have fun doing, and that my fan base, my old fan base, my core fan base, or my new fan base that I hope to grow enjoys.
You're obviously very humble when it comes to your acting and stuff because, you're saying you're learning it as you go. Was it hard to, when you first jumped into acting, you were kind of new at acting, but you were so well-respected in the wrestling industry. You were already a legend. Was it hard to come into acting where you were kind of the new guy again?
Well, it's just different because, to be at the level that I was at, to take the world of professional wrestling to a zenith, which it had never seen before. And, quite frankly, no one thought would surpass what Hulk Hogan did in the 80s and what I took it to. And that's just what you do as time goes on. You can take things to a bigger, better, and higher level. And then I don't want to say humbling because you always have to start somewhere. It doesn't matter how good you were at something else. When you're doing something different, you got to start at the same spot.
Sure.
And so it's, starting off the 101 level and wanting to get as good as possible. I want to be as effective or as good in front of a movie camera as I was in front of a WWE camera. But I think, in anything you do, repetition is the key. And you learn by working with people that are better than you, smarter than you, and more experienced than you. So, yeah, I take it, I know where I'm at, and I do believe in myself. I think I have talent, and I think I have ability. But you gotta crawl, and then you walk, and then you run, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. And you got to make it look like it's really smooth and really easy and really relaxing.
Who are some of the people that you've learned from doing this?
Well, and just working with Sly
Yeah.
would be probably the biggest budget movie that I've worked on, and with such an all-star cast. But watching how he runs his business, how he directs, how he acts, what he does. And then, my boss in the movie was Eric Roberts. And, the other guys were the Expendables. They were the heroes. Me and Eric Roberts were the villains. And we'd sit over and tell dirty jokes and laugh our asses off while they were doing their coverage. But I would pick that guy's brain 8-10 hours a day, and he would answer questions for me. And complete sweetheart and one of the funniest, craziest guys I've ever met in my life. But I was fortunate to be able just to sit there and pick his brain, who I consider Eric a grade A actor, and see what he does to go about his business. So it was a very interesting experience. I would say those two guys initially off that set, and I did talk to Mickey Rourke for about 45 minutes, and he was a real cool guy and brought me up to speed on a lot of things. But it takes time to learn this job. It takes
Sure.
time to learn it, but you got to start somewhere.
So you were back on Raw recently promoting Damage coming out on DVD as the guest host thing. You said in the other interviews that you've done that it was a little weird being back and stuff. When you got back there and got in the ring, was it reassuring to you knowing that, okay, maybe going into acting was the right move?
Oh, I think, going into acting was the right move, and it didn't have anything to do with going back to San Diego to do Raw. I was there to promote Damage. They were 2 weeks out from doing WrestleMania. Their sights are focused on what they had to accomplish, mine on what I had to accomplish. But the reason, I'm pretty honest that the reason I got out of professional wrestling was because my body said, "Hey, Steve, you've had enough." And like I tell everybody, and it's also true that I could get another couple of years out of my body. I could, but why? I had a very physical, aggressive style. I took hard, fast, quick bumps. The pile driver in 96 or 7, whatever it was, took its toll. Now I'm 100% as far as doing normal human being stuff.
Right.
But it was time for me to ride off into the sunset and preserve my health. And I want to live an active life for 10 to 20, 30 more years, doing the stuff that I do, riding my dirt bikes, four-wheelers, and the outdoor stuff that I love to do and for a long, long time. And it was time.
It's a rare thing kind of in wrestling for somebody to leave when they still got a good couple years in them. How does it make you feel when you see someone like Hulk Hogan, who's back to getting in the ring when he can't do the leg drop anymore, Is that kind of...
It's interesting. I get asked the question, is he ruining his legacy? And I think I've always respected what that guy did with his career. I mean, an unbelievable box office draw and a charismatic performer that so many people grew up and idolized, and a lot of respect from him and that, as far as what he did. But I don't like to talk too much about, what some of these guys are still doing in the ring. That's a personal decision.
Sure.
I made mine to get out, and I live with that decision. I'm cool with it, and I'm sure he's cool with what he's doing. If he's still doing it, me and Terry don't trade phone calls. We're not the best of friends.
Yeah.
We're not enemies. People say what they want to say or try to stir up animosity. I don't hold anything against the guy. At the end of the day, we're two of the guys that were pro wrestlers with a lot of things in common, a lot of things that aren't in common. But he does what he does, and it is what it is. And
Yeah.
I think it is what it is, says all I can say.
As far as guys coming back, you were there for the contract signing, the Vince McMahon Bret Hart deal at WrestleMania. Bret Hart's not coming back to active wrestling, of course, but he is coming back for this one match. Were you surprised to hear that Bret was going to do one more match with Vince?
I was glad to hear it.
Yeah.
There was so much real animosity between those guys with everything that happened in WWE with the screw job in Montreal with Bret and Shawn, and then Bret leaving and there was just a lot of animosity there, and Brett really thinks he got screwed, not so much in the storyline, but in real life. And for him to come back and put this behind him at some point, as I've gone down the road a few more paces, I seem to be making better decisions than I did back in the day.
Yeah.
I think in anything in life, if you can mature and get experience, makes you a better person or a smarter person anyway, or the ability to take advantage of making better decisions. And I think, enough water was under the bridge that he can finally say, okay, this is cool. I can accept this now. I can live with this. And I think it was like taking a big 100-pound weight off his back. And for them to be able to have closure in that storyline as a WWE angle and closure to their real deal angle in life, the animosity between them. I think it's a good thing. I'm looking forward to the match. I think it's going to be very entertaining. And, I'm glad to see Brett moving on.
On that note, there were times when towards the end of your WWE run, there were reports that you walked down on this, you did that on that. Do you regret those decisions now, or are you glad that you have them to grow from?
Well, when I look back at I was running so hard, and the level of intensity was so hot, and I was just white hot in the business, and I made a knee-jerk reaction to they wanted me to do a job in Atlanta. In a really non-publicized match that hadn't had enough notoriety with Brock, and I thought it was real piss-poor business, and it was. I've always been willing to do business when it was time to do business, but that wasn't business. And when you have a guy, and I never blow smoke up my own ass, but when you have a guy like me who draws big money, you don't just job him out on a bullshit Monday Night TV. And so I got to jazz up the language because that's something that I'm very passionate about and really comes from my heart and my guts. That being said, I shouldn't have got on an airplane and taken my ball and went home, as they said. But, when I look at hindsight being 2020, I should have went to the arena, should have talked to Vince and said, hey, you know what, I'm not doing it, but just stayed with the company. That was a year out of my life. And because of the personality type that I am, had it not been for Jim Ross sending me a card in the mail saying, hey, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. And then I picked up my phone and we talked for 2 hours, and he put me back in touch with Vince, and me and Vince buried the hatchet. Had it not been for Jim Ross, I'd already, basically told the company to go fuck themselves.
Right.
Without saying that, I wasn't going to have anything to do with them. So, to answer your question, I would have handled that situation a lot differently today, and it would have been great had I handled it differently back then. I lost a lot of money. They lost a lot of momentum. We all lost a lot of money, and the crowd lost a part of the product that they love to watch.
Looking back on your legacy, I don't know if you can kind of separate yourself from it yet. It seems like it's been long enough, though. Can you kind of look back on your career as a separate thing and think to yourself, where are you on whatever you want to call it, the food chain, the chain of command? Do you think you're the best, one of the best? What do you think you accomplished as a wrestler? Now
that I have been away as long as I have, and it really took looking at the Hall of Fame package that Adam Panucci cut together for me, works for Kevin Dunn in the WWE, where they put all their video stuff together. And it took me, when they sent me that piece of video, it was probably 4 or 5 minutes long, and it really encompassed a big part of my career, and I saw the emotion and was able to really look and understand what I did, because I had the blinders on back in the day. I didn't, I was about selling tickets.
Sure.
But it took being away from the business, it took me a long time just to be able to really see what I did. And now I get asked the legacy question, or what I thought I meant to the business, or where am I? And I like to keep it, now that my new answer and the way I really feel about it, long story short, bottom line is I brought gray to a black and white world. And the last bottom line is Stone Cold sold tickets.
Yeah.
That's it. I sold tickets.
I mean, and bringing gray to a black and white world is a real good way to phrase it, too.
Yeah, and I was never a great wrestler, but I was one of the greatest wrestlers to ever step foot in a squared circle,
Yeah.
So, so the bottom line is, if people want to ask me where I fit, just say I sold tickets.
Yeah.
A shit pile of them.
Well, for what it's worth, I talked to Ted DiBiase last week, senior, and he said you were the best of all time.
Man,
what it's worth.
that's Ted DiBiase, and I remember when I came into WWE many years ago. I was the ringmaster, and Ted DiBiase was my manager. And believe me, when I was watching Mid South and Power Pro or wherever Ted DiBiase was at, watching him work, watching him cut promos, and then for him to go in WWE and become the $1 Million Man, I'm a huge Ted DiBiase fan. And matter of fact, Ted DiBiase is going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year.
That's right. Yep.
So deservedly so, and he's a bad sumbitch. So if he says that, that's a hell of a compliment.
Is there anybody who's in the WWE now? Is there any wrestler or anything you think that can bring them back to that spot they were in when Stone Cold was at his peak?
Don't know.
Don't
know.
Okay.
I think John Cena's their number one guy right now. But man, you got to look the way that hit at that time, and we hit with full intensity, and we turned the volume all the way up, and we were able to use everything but the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And these days it's more of a PG show. And that being said, they're running strong. They're running strong and they're running hard, and business is good. With the economy being what it is, but. John Cena's their number one guy. You still got all the other top guys up there, but that was a special day and a special time. I was right. The rest of the ingredients were right, and we were printing money. So I would love to see that next new Stone Cold come around. Mm-hmm. And I hope to see it. I really do, because I'd love to see all my records smashed and watch what this new cat does and watch how he does it. But with that being said, it's going to be tough to do, but I'm looking forward to it.
And finally, back to the acting thing. If you want to be a mainstream actor, all these actors are plagued with the paparazzi and the TMZ cameras everywhere they go. Is that something you're going to be able to deal with without opening a can of whoop ass?
I deal with that on the level that I do.
You were just on TMZ the other day.
That was interesting. When you catch me with only one coffee in the morning and ask me about breast augmentation, it's kind of like, let me try to come up with a good answer. Here's the way it is. I was on back when I was at my most high point in WWE, white hot, one of the number one draws walking the planet at that time. And then when I had my pile driver and I walked away from the business for 15 months having my neck fused up, I've been on top of the world. I've had it yanked from me. From when I started in wrestling in the back end of 1989, it was the 1990 Rookie of the Year, to when I set attendance, pay-per-view, merchandise records, sold out arena records, I was always the same guy. Sometimes I was short-tempered because I was drinking a lot and running hard and very tired, but I've always been the same guy that you're talking to now, to the guy in the white-hot part of it, to the guy breaking in the green of the business. But that's because my parents brought me up to always keep everything in perspective and don't blow shit out of proportion. I never believed on my own press, and I kept my nose to the grindstone, was the first guy in the building and the last guy to leave. That's my approach to anything I do in life. I'm going to end up being a good actor. I'm on my way. I just need more and more experience. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter how high I get in this next world, I'm going to be the same guy, and that's just the way I live my life. And I don't care what anybody else does. This is my deal. I've got the blinders on, and I'm not racing against anybody else. I'm just trying to be the best Steve Austin I can be, and in the process, staying the same damn cat.
All right, well, Steve Austin, thank you for taking the time out. Damage, of course, on DVD now, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. I had fun making Damage. It's a cool movie. I'm proud of it, and I put my heart and soul into it, and it's going to get bigger and better from here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Here is Sam Roberts.
I couldn't get through the whole thing. I don't know if you could or not. I don't know. Maybe you enjoy hearing me go through what I was going through. Maybe it doesn't even resonate with you. I don't know. But that was me 7 years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago. Just a young boy in his 20s talking to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And if you listen to that, honestly, like, that's what I want you to keep in mind. This is a guy in his, I don't know, what was I, 26? Yeah, probably about 26 in that clip that we just heard. That might as well have been a 13-year-old interviewing Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hey, do you find... Well, I kept doing a young Sam Roberts impression. Do you find that being a wrestler has helped you with being an action star? Do you think that doing stunt fighting, is it dropping stunners, is that helpful? Does it help you to know, because you were a wrestler before, so does it help you to be, excuse me, I'm talking out of my nose. Does it help you to be
a stunt fighter in movie fights since you were a wrestler? Is there a correlation there?
And I mean, God bless Steve Austin for being a nice man in that one. I will stand by a lot of the stuff that I've done. I'll stand by plenty of it. That one, no, I'm embarrassed by it. I mean, I'm embarrassed by a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I won't stand by. But that one specifically, I will not stand by. And I hope that it brought you joy, seeing me less than perfect back in the heyday of 2010. Hey, if you want to celebrate Sam Roberts as you know him right now. By the way, if you want to know what I was like way back before 2010, like in 96 or so, 95, 96, I think, I was on a Nickelodeon game show called Figure It Out. I'm not lying. You want to know that? You want to see the truth? There's a photo of it. You want to see where the photo is? It's on a t-shirt at notsam.com/merch. The new ankle flipper t-shirt is up at notsam.com/merch. You can also get the Shill Roberts Shill t-shirt, the very, very popular 8-bit Not Sam t-shirt. You can get the Sam Roberts action figure t-shirt. You can get the classic Not Sam shirt, the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast t-shirt. Whatever you want, get it at notsam.com/merch. Get it today, and if I see you, I will give you, not only will I give you a fist bump on the street if I see you wearing one of those shirts, but it's going to explode. You know, when you fist bump and you make your hand blow up afterwards, that's what I will do for you if you pick up one of those amazing t-shirts. I would recommend it. I would feverishly recommend it. So, hey, a lot to talk about in the state of wrestling. I'm glad that you all joined me in the State of Wrestling bonus show that I put out on Friday of last week, just as news had broken. Isn't it amazing how quickly wrestling can move? There will be weeks where it feels like nothing has happened in forever. But if you skip the 45-minute bonus show that we put out on Friday, if you just listen to last week's podcast to this week's podcast, it's night and day. You're talking about a world where AJ Styles and Finn Balor had never been in a ring together, wrestling each other. You're talking about a world where Kurt Angle, who knows if he was ever coming back. You're talking about a world where Roman Reigns did not have symptoms of the mumps or of viral meningitis or whatever it is, okay? You're talking about a world when the Miztourage still included Bo Dallas. Okay, a lot's changed. We were all worried. I mean, it's so funny to think about it. We were all worried about what was going to happen between Orange Demon Finn Balor and Sister Abigail, and now it couldn't be more separated. It couldn't be more separated. You know? It's amazing. It's amazing how different the landscape looks right now. I don't think anybody's even talking about Sister Abigail. It makes you wonder if Sister Abigail is going to get revisited when Bray comes back. I would think not, right? It feels like they dodged a bullet with that one. But who knows? Who knows? And who knows what's going on with Finn Balor. But yeah, it was really, really interesting. And based on what we thought would happen at TLC, not everything we thought would happen happened. Some of the stuff did. I think we talked about here on the podcast that Kurt may come out in a Shield uniform instead of a singlet. Well, you know what? We're going to, and if you watch that, by the way, it was on Facebook Live. The Not Sam Studio is just about done. The Not Sam Studio is just about done, and we'll be able to do a lot more of those live video shows. I may do the State of Wrestling live on video every single week. Because this studio, it's going to blow your minds when I finally unveil it. It may be ready by next week. That's how soon we're talking. It's a very, very exciting time. The Not Sam Studios are about to be unleashed on the world. But before I unleash the Not Sam Studios, I bring us in to the State of Wrestling this week.
It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
Here we are at State of Wrestling time, and I'm coming to you, I'm actually recording this, luckily, and this was, as fate would have it, literally hours after seeing the premiere of ESPN's new 30 for 30 called Nature Boy. It's a documentary about the life and times and career of Nature Boy Ric Flair, and I just got home from the premiere of it. It was an amazing event. I kind of thought it was just a press screening, so I just showed up thinking I'd just, kind of sit in a dark theater, get to watch this movie. I was just psyched about getting to see the documentary on the big screen and getting to see it, a week or two before it comes out. November 7th is the day that it comes out on ESPN, so you'll be able to watch it November 7th at 10 p.m., and I would recommend that everybody does. Tons of people, though. This was more than a press screening. It was the full-on premiere. It was the first time that the movie had actually been shown publicly. Triple H was there. Charlotte was there. Mick Foley was there. Kurt Hawkins was there making history. It was an amazing, amazing time, and I had a blast, and I thank ESPN for the invite to that thing. And I want to tell you that this is a documentary that will not disappoint any of you. I couldn't see how it possibly could. I don't want to give out too many spoilers. I'm going to try not to give out any spoilers at all, because I think on November 7th, you guys should all, and I'm not getting paid for this, by the way. This is just how I feel coming off of just seeing it. I think we should all, as fans, sit around the TV and watch on ESPN, because a couple of things. Number one, the spoilers that I won't get into are mainly the people that contributed to the film, one specifically. After the documentary comes out, we can talk about it, but there is one specific person who contributes to this film and comments, about Nature Boy Ric Flair and what Ric Flair meant to him, that actually got a reaction from the audience. The audience actually, like, when he came on screen and started talking, it was like, whoa, he's in this? Okay. So it was pretty cool, and you'll figure out who it is when it comes out. But there were two things when this thing, because of course 30 for 30 is a series of sports movies that ESPN airs. It's a series of documentaries, and they're the best. There's so many good. The No Mas 30 for 30 is really good. Of course, the OJ 5-part 30 for 30 that came out either earlier this year or last year was incredible. But there have been so many really, really good ones. To me, it's the best thing ESPN does. The TV network, that is. So I think that this falls in line with it. And when it was announced a couple years ago that Ric Flair was getting his own 30 for 30 documentary, it's a big deal. Because the closest thing that we wrestling fans have gotten to any 30 for 30 about WWE was the XFL doc that came out, I don't know, a year or two ago, that Charlie Ebersol did. And that had nothing to do with WWE. It was just, except that Vince McMahon was the guy behind the XFL. ESPN, for their news show E60, did a profile on NXT, and they did a half-hour show about the Performance Center and the journey to NXT and things like that. But again, that was not a 30 for 30. This is a bigger deal. And as soon as it was announced that this was happening, 2 years ago they announced this was happening, I think, I was blown away that it was going to get made, but immediately I had my reservations about it for a couple of reasons. Number one, the movie, as it turns out, it's give or take, it's about an hour and a half. I don't know if I wasn't timing it, but I would say it's about an hour and a half, which is what I expected. So already I'm going, okay, well, what's the story that's being told here? Because if it's just the story of Ric Flair's career as a pro wrestler, how do you get that into 90 minutes and have it be something that's not just a highlight reel that we all kind of know? Because that's what I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in seeing some Ric Flair retrospective that's dumbed down for an audience that's not me, that I'm not going to get anything out of because I've been watching Ric Flair since I was a little kid. That said, it leads into my next reservation, which was this movie is being made to be aired on ESPN. It's not being made. This is not a WWE 24. It's very, very different. WWE, they cooperated with this movie. They contributed clips and superstars for interviews and things like that. Triple H and Stephanie and all of, they're in it, but it's not a WWE film. They had no editorial control of the movie. So I go, okay, so this is for ESPN, obviously. This is for the 30 for 30 series. And I start to wonder, I wonder if this is going to be the perspective of the story of Ric Flair from the perspective of a sports fan. Meaning, are they going to make this movie so mainstream that, they're baby stepping through what pro wrestling even is? A lot of people think it's all fake, but some of the action really hurts. Like, yeah, I know. Are you kidding me? Of course I know this. What is this? So just, Johnny football fan? Because that's always a mistake. Because with wrestling, like, what makes wrestling interesting is the stories that we all find interesting. Outsiders will find them just as interesting as we do. And then they'll want to kind of learn. But I've never known a dumbed down wrestling explanation to convince anyone that doesn't already like wrestling that wrestling is cool. And for people that do like wrestling, it's too dumbed down. They get nothing out of it. So that's what I was worried about, that this thing is going to be mainstream and it's going to be more about, like, Ric Flair's personal life and what's he doing now, and he hangs out with the Cleveland Cavaliers and he loves LeBron James and this is what his home life is like. And but I want to know about the wrestler. And I will tell you, on both of those counts, I was pleasantly surprised because the filmmaker delivered on both of those accounts. It is a story about Ric Flair, the wrestler. It's all wrestling for the most part. They also get into his family life, which I think is important because they get into it from the perspective of a wrestler and wrestling fans, and that being the epicenter of his life. If you heard the Charlotte interview that we did a couple weeks ago, you know that this is not a gimmick. That wrestling was Ric Flair's entire life and still is Ric Flair's entire life. You heard Charlotte say that he lost his memory when he was in the hospital. He couldn't remember who Charlotte was, but he remembered what the House did in Chicago in 1984. That's what he remembered because that was what was top of mind, because that's what was important to him and still is important to him. So it really delivers from the perspective of a wrestling fan. This is a movie that wrestling fans are going to like. But more importantly, I believe that this movie, especially because Ric Flair very publicly just survived a medical issue that a lot of people didn't think that he would survive. So he's got this second chance on life. And I think that's the way that a lot of people see him right now. This movie is going to make Ric Flair an even bigger pop culture icon. This movie is going to do what I think Ric Flair and the people around him have been trying to do with the Ric Flair brand for some time, which is it's going to remove it from pro wrestling and put it into pop culture. Put it into just the general zeitgeist of American entertainment. That's what it's going to do, because there is just, when you watch this thing and you're going over Ric Flair getting out of the 70s into the 80s, the Nature Boy becoming the Nature Boy, and then going over some of those promos and stuff, it's done in such a way where you can't help but go right back to where you would have been if you weren't in the 80s, thinking to yourself, God, I want to be that guy. God, do I want to be the guy who's going on TV and saying the things that he's saying? And you know why it was so effective? And it made me think about where we're at with wrestling today. The reason, one of the many reasons why Ric Flair is regarded as highly as he is today. And this movie will bring him to another level. Believe it or not, there is still more mountain for Ric Flair to climb, and this is going to put him way over the top. This is going to be that sort of crowning achievement. There it is. Here's the Ric Flair story, and they knocked it out of the park. But it made me realize that the reason why to this day Ric Flair is revered, taken seriously, looked at the way he's looked at, is because Ric Flair believed what he was saying into the camera lens. Ric Flair believed what he was saying into the microphone. And I don't care if you're the WWE champion. I don't care if you're the last professional broadcaster on a pre-show. If I don't believe what I'm saying into the microphone on the pre-show, you guys at home are going to tell me on Twitter that I suck. Because it's evident. Because you can, and now there are other reasons why you guys might tell me I suck, but we're not talking about that right now. But it's evident. It's evident. We know when we're listening to somebody who believes what they're saying, who lives what they're talking about. When Ric Flair talked about his shoes and his cars and his house and his coats and his watches, it was all real. When he talked about the women, it was all real. That's why it resonated the way it did, because it was real life. There's this amazing movie called The Prestige. It's a movie starring Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. And it doesn't get enough credit because it came out around the same time as another movie about magic, which was terrible, called The Illusionists. The Illusionist stinks. Don't go see it. The Prestige, go out of your way to make sure that you see it. Put it in your iTunes collection. Own it. It's an amazing movie. But the point of that movie is Hugh Jackman is this magician. And he's the number one magician. And he's this good-looking guy, and everything's slick, and everything's professional. He's like Hulk Hogan. But then there's Christian Bale, who is nipping at his heels. And he doesn't have the show business, and he doesn't have the looks, and he doesn't have the smoothness that Hugh Jackman does. But he's like a magician's magician, right? He's like the Ric Flair. And throughout this movie, the Hugh Jackman character does not understand why he can't one-up this Christian Bale character until it becomes clear that the reason for that is that Christian Bale, as a magician, that character, lives the act. And it's a big part of the movie where he goes, you have to live the act. Everything. Personal life, family, friends, everything gets cast aside so that you can live the act. And you watch this movie, The Prestige, and it seems so clear. The reason The Undertaker is not because he's won X number of matches or lost X number of matches or been around for so long. It's because we believe him. We believe The Undertaker. And sure, you can find some out-of-character shots if you look hard enough. He had his face as the American Badass. Every now and then, his wife might post a picture on Instagram. That's all fine, because he's put so much work into that character. He has lived that act for so long. It is so unusual when he does anything out of character that we believe the character. We are far more familiar with that character than we are with a man named Mark Calloway. Far more familiar. You got to live it. You have to live the act. And there's a lot that happens these days, I think, more than there used to be. I think in the world of pro wrestling right now, because there's an acknowledgement that fans have become as smart, quote unquote, as they are to the business, quote unquote, that it's almost like the performers can give a wink. We all know we're performing. You all know I'm joking around. But Kevin Owens lives the act. Kevin Owens will curse at a kid and not apologize to the kid later. He won't check and make sure he's okay after the show. He won't. He'll continue to insult him, and then he'll insult his mother. Not because Kevin Owens is a bad guy. I'm sure Kevin Owens is a wonderful father, as a matter of fact. However, he's not a father to the people that are in the audience. He's a villain to the people that are in the audience, and he lives that act. Sami Zayn is doing the same thing at the moment. Sami Zayn on SmackDown. He changed everything. He changed his whole persona, the way he was skanking to the ring with a newfound confidence, getting in Shane McMahon's face. He was living it in that moment. He was living it. The Miz has found a character that he can live. The Miz lives his act. Even John Cena, to an extent. John Cena has figured out his character to the extent that if you see him host the Today Show, it's not a different John Cena. It's John Cena is John Cena is John Cena. These are the guys who live it. These are the guys that you're not really worried about, like, oh, we saw a photo of him out of character, or, oh, he's talking to this person or that person on Twitter. You know, it all counts. I understand that we live in a whole different era, but all that stuff counts. You know, people are sitting there going like, oh, I didn't like Raw because when SmackDown invaded Raw, the good guys and the bad guys were on the same team on SmackDown. Yeah, but if you go on half their Instagrams, they're hanging out together on the European tours. You know? All of it counts. All of it counts. The Bullet Club is the hottest faction in pro wrestling right now. One of the many reasons, aside from being very, very talented athletes, all of them, is that we believe that they're best friends. We believe that they are fighting, you know, from the bottom up. They're punching up at WWE. We believe all this cool stuff, and we believe that the things that they're doing that we've seen before is not them ripping anybody off. We believe that they are legitimate fans of this world that we all kind of worship, and that the things they do, whether they're telling somebody to suck it or throwing up their two sweets or super kicking or doing other things that we've seen before, all of those things are an homage to things and people and events that we also appreciate. We believe it all. They're living the act. We believe that if we see Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks hanging out together, number one, we believe that they would hang out together, and number two, we believe that when they do, whether there's a camera on them or not, it's just like one of their YouTube shows. We believe it. And that, I think, is what everybody who wants to be successful in this world, they need to adopt this thing of living their act. You don't see photos of Brock Lesnar fraternizing with anybody. You don't. You see Brock Lesnar as the Beast. He's introduced as the Beast. He's pronounced as the Beast. There he is. You know? Braun Strowman, thank God he's cursing out fans on the internet for bringing up the fact that maybe he used to hang out with Adam Rose every now and then. Because otherwise, you know, and he's got to stop that too. And he did. You know, now he lives this thing. And there's an uphill battle for him, but it's true. You know, Jinder Mahal should be in a suit and a turban everywhere that he goes. Dean Ambrose should always be kind of crazy everywhere that he goes. You know, I think when Alexa Bliss does interviews, I don't think it would be crazy if she was kind of a brat to the people that were interviewing her. Same way I think Kevin Owens should kind of be a dickhead to people that are interviewing him, because that's part of living the act, you know? That's part of the magic that would go on. Watch some of the Arsenio, go on YouTube and find like appearances on the Arsenio Hall show and the Regis and Kathy Lee show that some of the WWF then superstars did in the late 80s and early 90s. Coming out in full gimmick on these talk shows. Tights. Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan. Rude wearing the robe and tights with Kathy Lee's face on it. You know, Hogan coming out, well, he didn't wear his little yellow tights, but he always wore spandex. Macho Man in full character. Like, that stuff counts. And as ridiculous as it is, and probably difficult for the superstars themselves to pull this off, because all they want to do is have an adult conversation at some point, I'm sure. But if they live the act, man, people buy into it. And boy, did people buy into it with Ric Flair. And that's one of the things that makes him so special. He lived the act more than probably anybody. He portrayed a character that was the man that everybody wanted to be, and he decided to become that character, IRL, in real life. So that was my kind of takeaway from the film. I'm sure you all will watch it when it comes out on television, and make a point to, because it's really, really a special film. Coming out of Raw this week, so we should talk a bit about TLC. I thought that TLC was a decent pay-per-view. I thought that most of the undercard matches were actually really, really good. I thought the two women's matches were quite good, and I thought AJ Styles versus Finn Balor was a terrific match. I thought those three matches, and the Cruiserweight tag match was actually really, really good too. The 4 really solid matches on that undercard. You know, the Enzo match was what it should have been, I suppose. You know, it wasn't this catch as catch can classic, but it was what the Enzo character needed that match to be. And then the last match is where I think the pay-per-view fell apart for a lot of people. The Kane and Braun and Cesaro and Sheamus and The Miz versus The Shield with Kurt Angle. I think that's where people fell apart because it was a crazy, crazy match. I mean, craziness ensued. You've got chairs coming down from the ceiling, falling on Braun Strowman. Then he gets up. Then he gets crushed in a garbage truck. And I mean, if we're not seeing the human incarnation of, oh my God, they killed Kenny, I don't know what's going on, because it's the second time vehicular manslaughter has been committed to Braun Strowman on a pay-per-view in WWE. I don't know how the guy keeps surviving it, but somehow he does. And I think we can all be in agreement that coming off of that pay-per-view, Braun Strowman is a good guy. I've been saying it forever, but it's pretty obvious to me. That's the only way to go with this dude. So it wasn't a great match by any stretch, but I thought there were fun parts to it. You know, I wasn't upset watching it. I just thought it was kind of ridiculous. You know, I thought it was just kind of a crazy, silly match, and you kind of have to do that, right? You can only do so much Shield stuff because now you're missing Roman Reigns, and still it's 5-on-3. So you have to do things in a certain way where the bad guys aren't going to look ridiculous getting beat up, even though they outnumber the good guys, and that the good guys don't just sit there getting their butts kicked for, you know, an hour, because we want to believe in our heroes, right? So it was what it was. My real bummer was just that my thing didn't happen, which is usually how I feel. I think that's how a lot of us feel. We book the pay-per-views in our head, and then when the pay-per-views don't go our way, we go, it sucked. But I still think, you know, I don't think The Miz wins enough matches, to tell you the truth. I think I get why this might have happened 2 years ago, but The Miz being as good as he is right now, The Miz, more than a lot of people, should be in the conversation for either WWE or Universal Champion. And I've been saying that since before he got moved to Raw. That is a conversation that The Miz should be in. I'm not saying that he should be the one to beat Brock Lesnar, but he should be in contention for that championship. And whoever beats Brock Lesnar should be eventually defending it against The Miz. But in order for The Miz to get there, I think he needs to win more matches, and I just love the idea, the dynamic between Kurt Angle, because you could have had Kurt Angle pinned without the Shield being damaged at all, and without a Kurt Angle return being hurt. I think it was very smart to put Kurt Angle in the vest because it saves the Kurt Angle singlet debut for later, which, you know, and like I said in the bonus podcast, I think that when Kurt Angle comes back to do a singles match at some point, it'll be super special. And I've got a theory for Survivor Series that we'll talk about. But, yeah, I think that nobody would have gotten hurt if The Miz had beaten Kurt Angle. And I love the idea of Kurt Angle trying to boss The Miz around on Raw and The Miz reminding him that he pinned him. And it would be schmozzy, you know what I mean? It would be Kane chokeslamming him, and then, you know, the Bar coming in and screwing him up, and then The Miz comes in and sneaks a pin against Kurt Angle, and we go, whoa, what happened just then? And it's you know, people would be surprised by it, and I just like the dynamic it sets up, as I said. But regardless, it didn't happen, and I understand why. I guess you want to leave on a positive note and have the good guys win, and Kurt Angle's back, and yada, yada, yada. I believe firmly that the Survivor Series, you know, we'll get into Raw a little bit. First of all, AJ Styles was looking very comfortable on Raw, wasn't he? On the pay-per-view, I really enjoyed the fact that he was wearing all blue. And I thought the match was amazing, as I said. It was really, really good. I wish it had more time. But I love that he was wearing all blue from head to toe. I thought it was a great little detail. But on Raw, wearing the red camo and kind of fitting right in and being showcased extraordinarily well, I think that was just done to add a little credit to SmackDown. But still, he looked very, very comfortable on Raw. And I would not be surprised if AJ is on Raw much sooner than later. I think that AJ probably, as a man, not as a character, but as a man, probably realized, look, Raw is the A show. It just is what it is. And he took advantage of the time that he had there and really, really showed up. And I think that he proved a lot of things to a lot of people, and that he probably will be on Raw before too long. Next time, the next moment they have that it makes sense, I bet they'll put AJ Styles over on Monday Night Raw. So they started setting up for the Survivor Series on Raw. And I kind of felt that just introducing all the matches for Survivor Series at the top of Raw was a little bit low energy. I thought there was a lot there to dissect that we didn't really get to dissect. I loved the idea. I like the idea of the champions fighting each other and then the 5-on-5 matches happening as well. They have not said specifically if any of the matches are for any championships. I think because nothing was said, the prevailing theory is that these are all exhibition, non-title matches. And for the most part, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that the title should be joined up. I think that the show should have separate champions across the board. But all that said, man, did Conrad convince me last week that Jinder Mahal should beat Brock Lesnar and get both titles. I think they should just all in. Every pay-per-view since Jinder Mahal has won the WWE Championship, people have said he should lose it now, he's not the real champion, da-da-da. I think they go all in, really throw everybody for a loop, and have Jinder beat Brock Lesnar and hold on to both titles. You've still got time for WrestleMania to create something cool with Roman Reigns, if that's where you want to go. You got a lot of time. Might as well shake it up a little bit. Last year, Survivor Series is where things started to get shaken up. Last year, Brock Lesnar walked into Survivor Series as the Universal Champion, I think. Right? Yeah. Isn't that when Goldberg beat him? He beat him for the title, right? Or no? Maybe, I don't remember. No, Kevin Owens was the champion still. Right? Oh, gosh. My memory's fading. But regardless, no, Goldberg was the champion. I was right the first time. Goldberg, that Survivor Series is where Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar last year. 2 years before that, I guess, is where Sting made a surprise appearance. Survivor Series is that sleeper pay-per-view. Survivor Series is that pay-per-view that was one of the big four that kind of fell off. And over the past 5 years or so, I think WWE has been working vehemently to make it a big four show again. And I think that in order to do that, they pull out all the stops. They have big surprises happen. WrestleMania and SummerSlam both kind of sell themselves. The Royal Rumble match and the fact that it leads to WrestleMania is a big seller, and it's never lost any steam. But Survivor Series is the one where it's like, it feels like it's the furthest from WrestleMania, I guess, because it's SummerSlam is like bouncing off of WrestleMania. But then Survivor Series happens after that, so you're not even really thinking about WrestleMania anymore. And then it's still so long until WrestleMania, anything could happen at Survivor Series, and it won't have any effect on anything. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's tough for people to consider it a big four. But I don't think it's impossible, and I think you keep showing up with crazy stuff. Keep surprising people at Survivor Series shows, and that's how you build it up. And I do think that the brand split has been done well. I don't know that the talent has been distributed well, but the conceptually, the brand split has been done very, very well, I believe. And so having the two brands on one show is a selling point and does make these shows bigger than they were before. So there is something to that. And I like the concept of Raw and SmackDown being at war one time a year. Because even when the brands are together, you really don't see Raw versus SmackDown matches happening very much at WrestleMania or SummerSlam or shows like that. So Survivor Series is the one time a year it'll happen. And I like that. It gives you potential matches that you wouldn't think you would see anytime soon. So Miz versus Baron Corbin, I think, is going to take a little bit of work to make that match matter, because Miz and Baron Corbin are are both great bad guys. So I almost wouldn't want to waste them against each other because they're both real bad guys too. They're not bad guys that everybody's just waiting for to turn. You know when you have bad guys that are so good, it's like, okay, it's time for you to be a good guy and we really just want to watch your matches so we can boo you, but we're actually cheering you. Miz and Baron Corbin are legit bad guys in the sense that we boo them, but we don't want to change the channel. And so I don't know that I would... That is a weirdly matched match, but I like the concept of Intercontinental versus United States Champion. Alexa Bliss versus Natty is a fun one. I think that's a cool match. That's a match that I want to see. And I think that Seth and Dean versus the Usos is going to steal the show. I think Seth and Dean as a tag team are just... They're incredible, and they're better than they've been in a long time. And the Usos, as I said before, are my favorite things in WWE right now. So I think that match is going to steal the show. The question is, what happens with the 5-on-5 Survivor Series match? Who's on from Raw? Who's on from SmackDown? You could have Finn Balor on Team Raw, except he lost to Kane. Oh, my God. I don't know what that was. You have a guy... It's always weird to me, like, he beat AJ Styles clean in the center, which is what I said should happen on the bonus state of wrestling last week. I think that that's good. But the last thing that I thought was that Finn Balor beating AJ Styles was just a move to make Kane look stronger. Kane beating Finn Balor the way he beat him was like, I know, maybe on paper they were like, well, we're going to give him 3 choke slams. So then it's like, who could survive 3 choke slams? It's like the choke slam isn't that devastating of a move anymore. A lot of people have choke slammed a lot of people. I've done a choke slam, okay? Look it up on YouTube. It's almost as embarrassing as the interview was on today's podcast. But to have Finn Balor lose after 3 choke slams, it's like, oh my God. You know, people talk about him having the Brock Lesnar match. You think Finn Balor's going to get the Brock Lesnar match? He can't beat Kane? I don't think so. And I like Kane. I like what's going on with Kane right now. I like the return of the Big Red Machine. I just don't want... I cringed when I heard Finn Balor's music play. I'm like, no. Because, of course, that was the moment when Kane beat somebody because we want to start building him up for this match with Braun Strowman. I love that. I wish it was... Obviously, it can't be right now. I worry that we're never going to get the Roman Reigns-Kane confrontation because I think that Kane avenging his brother, you know, reminding everybody that The Undertaker and Kane are brothers, I think that is potential right there for something really, really cool. I think that is something that should be done. I worry that Kane's just back for one story and Braun Strowman is that story. I don't mind Braun Strowman taking out Kane. I just wish Roman Reigns were going to do it at some point. And I do mind if Finn Balor has to get run over in the process. I mean, I don't know why you do that to poor Finn. Poor Finn Balor. He thought he had escaped certain death with this Sister Abigail thing, and then he gets run over by Kane. It's not right. And I don't understand. I guess, you know, in that case, if I had known that Finn Balor was going to get squashed to Kane on Raw, I probably would have just said, have AJ beat Finn Balor. I mean, if you're going to have Finn Balor get beat, why not have AJ beat him? You want to make SmackDown look stronger, right? It's tough to make it look strong. I mean, you got all these good guys on Raw. Might as well make AJ look like the real deal. But no, you have Finn Balor beat AJ, and then Kane beat Finn Balor, and it's almost like, who's doing what now? What difference does any of it make? But in terms of the Raw and SmackDown teams, obviously, you're going to have Randy Orton on the SmackDown side. I would imagine Shinsuke Nakamura will beat Kevin Owens on Raw. So you'll have Nakamura and Randy Orton on the SmackDown side. I would imagine you'll have, well, the Shield, maybe if Roman Reigns is back, he'll be on the Raw team. If not, you know, you'll probably, well, The Miz is doing, maybe you'll have Sheamus and Cesaro on the Raw team, because obviously you're going to have good guys with good guys and bad guys with bad guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Jordan ends up on the Raw team. I don't know that he should, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I'll tell you what I would put money on right now. Team Raw's, and I don't think this was said on television. I believe this is an original thought. But it seems pretty obvious to me. Team Raw's captain will be Kurt Angle, and Team SmackDown's captain will be Shane McMahon. I believe Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon will wrestle in that match at Survivor Series. They will be their team captains, and they will wrestle in the match. Now I think that's cool, having Shane and Kurt Angle in there, and then you got four of the other guys on each side. I think that's fun. That's cool to me. I just there was a lot of criticism about the angle on Raw. The angle, the Kurt Angle. Of course the Raw Under Siege angle, and how, Raw did not avenge that, which is okay. I think that they will. But the commentary for it came in with, some people thought that it looked cheesy. Some people loved it. Some people thought it was awesome. Some people thought it looked cheesy. Some people thought it hurt more than it helped because you had good guys and bad guys on the SmackDown side working together, and where did this all come from? I didn't necessarily have a problem with SmackDown working together or attacking Raw. To me, it was like athletes on a team. It was athletes on a team that are simply defending their team. It was, you guys just found out that at Survivor Series, it's that brand versus this brand. What are you going to do? And they go in and take the first shot. I could see that. That didn't bother me. And the good guys working with bad guys thing, the Usos I don't think were there. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn weren't there. The one that people really pointed out was Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode. But I'm not sitting there, honestly, looking at this Dolph Ziggler, Bobby Roode story as this grand example of storytelling. It's just the thing that Bobby Roode is doing right now, and and Dolph Ziggler is kind of doing something new. It's not a thing where I'm going, oh my God, there's real personal issues between these two guys. At no point did that happen. So I don't mind seeing Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler on the screen together defending SmackDown together. That didn't bother me. I didn't think it was this amazing thing. I didn't think it was NWO cool. I didn't think it was as cool as the original Nexus takeover. And I'm talking about just the first night. Not where the angle went, but just the first night. I thought that it was cool. It was unpredictable. I wouldn't have seen it coming. It was something to talk about. It visually looked cool. And it was something that we're going to do for 4 weeks, right? It was something that we're doing till Survivor Series. So what do you do that pits brands against each other? This was not done on Raw so that SmackDown and Raw could be in competition for the next year. This was done on Raw so that you have something to fuel you for 4 weeks. And maybe next week Raw is going to come and attack SmackDown, and maybe and that's fine. Have them attack each other a little bit. To me it was kind of reminiscent of the Invasion, the WCW and ECW versus WWE, in the sense that it wasn't bad, but I wasn't sitting there losing my mind over the Invasion. I don't think it was a classic storyline by any stretch of the imagination. In principle, it is. Conceptually, the idea that WCW is going to come and attack WWE is amazing. But in terms of execution, in terms of who was there, in terms of where it happened and everything, it wasn't great. But I wasn't sitting there going this sucks. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what's going on. And that's how I felt about Raw. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, all the SmackDown guys coming in. I thought it was weird. It was the first time I saw Seth and Dean jump the guys backstage, and Seth and Dean were wearing their vests, and Kurt Angle wasn't around, and obviously Roman Reigns wasn't around. And I was like, what are those guys doing in vests? There's supposed to be 3 of them. It was the first time I thought it was weird. I was like, why are Seth and Dean wearing their Shield gear if there's just the 2 of them? Wait for Roman to come back before you put the gear on. So yeah, that's as far as the women go. I think that Alicia Fox had one of the best weeks in a long time, is having one of the best moments. I guess it's been a couple weeks. I kind of love the idea that she's the captain of Team Raw because it's unpredictable and because she's doing really fun stuff in this crazy character. I'm really enjoying what Alicia Fox is doing. But when this women's revolution thing happened, it was like, oh my God, here comes Becky Lynch and Charlotte and Sasha and Bayley. All the NXT chicks are coming, and it's going to change women's wrestling, and it did, and it was effective. But I watched this show, and at this moment, Asuka has come to completely take that from them. In this moment, as I watch that show, regardless of where she gets put or how she gets treated or whatever, when you just look at this woman perform, when you look at how she looks like, when you look at what her face does, how she presents herself, everything about her from top to bottom, Asuka is the woman to beat in terms of performance in the WWE right now. Asuka is the woman to beat. I hope that they save the Charlotte-Asuka match. If it's me, Charlotte versus Asuka is your WrestleMania women's match. And I understand by then it'll be Charlotte as the SmackDown Women's Champion versus Asuka as the Raw Women's Champion. But imagine that. It's champion versus champion. Maybe it's title versus title. And it's Asuka with her undefeated streak on the line, with her title on the line, taking on Charlotte, who is described as already being the best women's wrestler of all time. That is a quote that's been attributed to Charlotte, and I'm paraphrasing it. It's not a direct quote, but regardless, that is your match. Charlotte versus Asuka. And Asuka is the woman that all other women should be looking at like, okay, that's the level I need to be competing on. I do wonder, I wouldn't be surprised if Asuka takes part in the Raw. I would hope that Asuka is going to be part of the Raw Survivor Series team. And if she is, that's a lot. If Asuka is a part of the Raw Women's Survivor Series team, then you've got 9 other women that are all going to be working on how do we not get outshined by Asuka. That's really how I feel. That's how I feel based on what Asuka's done in her 2 matches with Emma. I'm super optimistic. I am super high on Asuka right now. So yeah, that's where it's going. Like I'm not dismayed by the way we're going into Survivor Series, but I think there's still quite a bit of work to do. And I think that's okay. We got time. We got 3 weeks. We came in strong. We've got a real strong idea, a lot stronger than we came into TLC. We have a really strong idea of what Survivor Series looks like. But I think you're going to have to put a lot more effort into promoting some of these matches than you have so far. And I think that you got plenty of time to do it, so it's not going to be too big of a deal. One of the big stories this week outside of WWE was Jeff Jarrett, and this story expanded throughout the week. But Jeff Jarrett being fully removed from Impact Wrestling altogether. So, of course, Jeff Jarrett comes into Impact Wrestling, and he rebrands it, and Global Force is what Impact kind of becomes. And then, kind of out of nowhere, we just hear that Global Force is going back to Impact, which, by the way, they've gone through like 4 sets of championship titles in the last year or so. But TNA is going back to Impact, and Jeff Jarrett is not going to be in charge. He's just going to be on a consultant basis. And then, we heard some rumors, and this week was not a good week for Jeff Jarrett. So, first, we find out that Jeff Jarrett and everything Global Force has been fully removed from Impact Wrestling. Jeff Jarrett has been let go. Global Force they've completely ceased their ties. We're right back to strictly Impact Wrestling. And Jeff Jarrett had a quote out there that said it's because, Impact Wrestling is out of money. But then you started hearing reports about Jeff Jarrett having some problems with drinking maybe. And I don't know. I think it's just drinking, but I don't know for sure, and I don't think anybody aside from him, Jeff himself really knows for sure. Then I read that, there was a promoter this week that was complaining about the state that Jeff Jarrett was in when he showed up to the show, and there was video that came out of Jeff Jarrett kind of seeming intoxicated at his match. Finally, as of press time, I read that Jeff Jarrett has checked himself into a rehab center, and I really hope he gets better, because Jeff Jarrett's I think Jeff Jarrett is underrated with how much he's been able to accomplish in this world outside of the WWE. Jeff Jarrett is one of the very few people who left the WWE, went to WCW, and after WWE purchased WCW, Jeff Jarrett never popped up in WWE. He never had the benefit of having that machine behind him, and he was able to get TNA started and get them really, really rolling to the point that it's still, the company as a wrestling company still exists, which is a big, big deal. But he has done a lot. He has not only survived in this complicated world of pro wrestling, but he has prospered and he has evolved, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done in the ring. I just hope he can get his personal stuff figured out, because especially these days, it happens less, I think, in the world of wrestling than it used to. And so when it does happen, it's almost like, oh man, that's bad. That's not good. Before it was almost like, boys will be boys, but now it's like, no, man, people aren't really doing that stuff anymore. So I get kind of upset when I read guys that's happening to guys, especially somebody like Jeff Jarrett. So we really hope for the best for Jeff Jarrett, and hope that he gets whatever help that he may need where he's at. I think that's gonna about sum it up for State of Wrestling this week. I appreciate all you guys being there. Don't forget to rate the podcast 5 stars over on iTunes and subscribe to the deal, and go to notsam.com/merch for all your Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast t-shirt needs. Until next week, this has been Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast.
Thanks for listening. Follow at notsam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And subscribe for free to listen every week to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast.